We're just about to start the haiku workshop with Margaret. So welcome back, Margaret Simmons. She's the Associate Professor and the Deputy Director of Monash Rural Health. And she's going to be running the haiku workshop this lunchtime. Thank you, Margaret.
Thanks, Simone, and welcome everybody. Once these slides, someone stops sharing those slides, I'll be able to share my slides. Fantastic. Thank you. So hopefully you can all see my slides full screen now. Don't know if anyone can give me a thumbs up or a reaction.
Yep, all good. Thanks, Margaret.
Oh, thanks, Mahima. Yes, it's a bit like speaking into the ether in a webinar, isn't it? But I can see that there's nearly 50 people here, so that's really exciting. Thank you for coming back to haiku. It can be considered a form of mindfulness. Even in the title page, you can see that one of my colleagues, Michael Leach, has written this haiku, a breathing space to view artworks and pen haiku written photographs. And so hopefully today we'll be able to come up with some haiku that you create. There is a competition and I'm going to give you some ideas for where you might even consider publication. But I wanted to, and you might be able to post in chat whether anyone has written any haiku, or do we have any poets in residence, or conversely, do we have people that, you know, think, oh my God, poetry, and they're absolutely terrified of it? Perhaps you can pop some responses in chat and we'll see what people think about the idea of poetry and haiku. I actually wrote my PhD using poetic representation. So I know as a child I didn't particularly like poetry at all, but I'm a convert. So I do have to give credit to Michael Leach. He is a poet in residence of ours at Monash Rural Health. He's also a quantitative researcher, which is, you know, the two kind of, for him, definitely go hand in hand. For me as a qualitative researcher, there's that sense of poetry even when we talk about narratives and writing. So let's move along. And if anybody wants to eat their lunch, you're very welcome to. That's absolutely fine. So just a little overview. We've got around 45 to 50 minutes. It's going to be a pretty short and sharp session, a bit like haiku, which are short. Hopefully you'll take home some tips and tricks, and you'll be able to continue practicing this in your own time, even if you don't decide to publish, or even if you don't decide to enter the competition, although we hope you do, obviously. Hopefully you'll be able to write, you'll be able to review and revise your haiku. And at the end, we'll show you again how to enter that competition. I'm not sure, maybe, are there prizes?
Yes, Margaret, there will be a prize, yeah.
Yes, perfect.
We'll announce it on Friday via Twitter, and if the person is not on Twitter, we'll email them.
Fantastic. Yeah, so please, sorry, I've just come out of teaching and we were using chat, but if you have questions, work through the Q&A button on your computer. So, what is haiku? Some of you may know what it is. Some of you may know nothing about it. It's a very old Japanese art form, in actual fact. Traditionally, haiku were connected with the weather and the seasons in Japan. They're generally grounded in an appreciation of nature and specific experiences. They're quite succinct. They usually only have 3 lines and up to 17 syllables. And when you're learning, it's often useful to think of 5 syllables in the first line, 7 syllables, and then another 5 syllables. Although you can vary that, there is flexibility. Haiku are also very evocative. They evoke emotions in the reader, not in the writer necessarily. They're generally written in present tense, not past tense. And they often juxtapose two images. Sometimes we think of them as like written photographs. Interestingly, if we're exploring it historically again, thinking about the sociological imagination, during World War I, Allied soldiers wrote haiku in the trenches. And this is quite a poignant one. White wooden crosses bursting from the soil each day, here and there. And that's an English translation of a French soldier poet. It's a very powerful haiku. There's a kind of sense of playfulness, you know, here and there, juxtaposed against what we know are the horrors of trench warfare. Another commentary on war was provided by Japanese poet Santoka Taneda in the form of a question, and this is early in the 20th century. And his haiku was, "Will the town throw a festival for those brought back as bones?" Again, very powerful, very evocative kind of an expression, artistic expression. As you can see, they're very compressed. So we have this haiku: "To a mass of petals, a mouth opening carp, summer appearing." They can emerge from moments of reflection, and the language doesn't need to be profound. It can be playful, like this one. It can be simple. It can be quite charming. A mouth opening carp, but nevertheless, it's you know, it's delightful. It's evocative. I've got some more contemporary haiku, and Michael Leach, as I explained, wrote the haiku at the very front, and this is another haiku that he wrote. "Flu shot announcement, hospital staff line right up to become patients." And that's obviously talking about, you know, the flu vaccination that most healthcare workers have. And Leo Lavery's "Refugees trying to get through the TV screen." I find that one very, very profound, very powerful. There's that sense of, you know, the media, they're trying to get their message through, refugees, via the television, via media, but they're also trying to get through in another sense, trying to, you know, often it's escaping conflict. So sometimes haiku start with capital letters, sometimes a lowercase. There's quite a lot of freedom. It's really up to the individual. But notice that they rarely focus on the self. They're rarely talking about my experience and what I am feeling, but it's more about what is happening external to the self. So, as I said, it doesn't have to be too rigid. If you count up if you count all the syllables in these, they may not be the 5, 7, and 5 that's traditional, and that's actually okay. So, for example, I wrote this haiku and actually got it published, which was a little bit of a surprise, in Pulse magazine. So if you do, they put an annual call out for haiku and also other poetry. They actually have a specific haiku call out, and it's called "Two Slippers." Two slippers sit under his bed. One leg lies on top. And the provenance of that haiku was an experience that my mother told me when my father was in hospital. It's quite, you know, written quite a long time ago. It was about a gentleman in the ward my father was in hospital with, and he had been taken into surgery to have a leg amputated. And my mother was horrified that the patient's two slippers were going to be there when he got back. She thought that that was awful because it would remind the patient that he once had two legs, the two slippers. So I found that quite a kind of a profound thing to comment on. And so that was how I came up with this haiku. If you have a look at this haiku, it's not written in 5-7-5, that pattern. It's actually 3-7-3. And that's okay too. You can vary the number of syllables. It can go from, as low as 10 up to 17, but generally not more than that. But you will also notice that even though this was a past experience, it's written in the present tense, which is very traditional. So some writing tips, again, use that immediate present tense. It makes it more dramatic. Haikus observe rather than explain. They show what happens rather than, they're not necessarily about our feelings. The feelings are evoked in the reader. You can lean into uncertainty. You don't have to be too rigid about this. You can just start and you can revise them. And sometimes they can be written, like I wrote 2 slippers very quickly, very little revision. It's not something you have to agonize over, although if you want to agonize, then, you can definitely agonize over them, but you don't have to. They can be written quite quickly. You can look at some of the classics and explore nature, because traditionally they were about nature. And it's about using symbolic language rather than similes. So a simile might be, my love is like a red, red rose. It's like something, but you try not to use those. Try not to repeat yourself, and as I said, lean into that uncertainty. Don't get too hung up on precise form. It's about, does it feel okay? Does it feel sort of intuitively right for you? Some haiku don't waste words. So make every word count. It has a job to do in the haiku. Don't use too many adjectives and avoid sort of too many unnecessary metaphors. Avoid giving objects human qualities. So, what we would call anthropomorphizing inanimate objects. So as an example, Bullock, who writes a lot about haiku and has written a lot of haiku, he wrote a haiku, and in it he talked about, he had a line about factories waiting for workers in the early morning. And when he got the feedback, the editor had said, well, factories don't wait. So he'd anthropomorphized factories. He'd given an inanimate object a kind of an identity, and haiku, we tend not to do that. So when we've written our haiku, and we'll come to that shortly, just have a look at how this haiku has been revised and refined. So in version 1, we have a cold winter wind, the rolling hills of night, frosty in starlight. So we've got repetition. It's quite nice. But in version 2, a frosty wind, the hills roll away into starlight. I think you can see the big differences between those 2 versions. We've got rid of the repetition. We don't need to say it's winter. It's a frosty wind. That evokes winter, doesn't it? It's cold, it's wintry. We don't have to actually say that in the haiku. The frosty wind does it for us. And that the lines, the hills roll away into starlight. I mean, I find that really incredibly beautiful. We can really sort of visualize the theme in our mind's eye, I think. So you can see that how you can improve on your haiku, thinking about some of the tips and tricks and don'ts. And yes, I can see in the Q&A that, we will definitely give you more instructions on how to submit. And perhaps even, we could share these slides with people if they want to go away and do some homework. So now we have some images. That's kind of enough for, for the instructions. It's really up to you now to come up with some haiku. And these images are simply prompts for inspiration. You can use them or not. You might think about your workplace. You might have another idea altogether, and that's absolutely fine, as long as your haiku relates to the topic of the symposium, which is digital health equity. Okay, so that's really the only parameter that you need to think about is digital health equity. And your haiku can really be on anything in that field that you want to. So I'm just going to slowly go through these images, and you can see, do they evoke anything in you that you think you might like to write about? So these are most of the images again. I can go back through them if you like, but choose an image or choose something that appeals to you, that it might have been just something in the presentation or something in this morning's presentations. And what we'll do now is take some time so you can actually just put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard and come up with your own haiku. And we'll spend about 20 minutes doing that, and then come back and we'll see if anybody wants to share their haiku. And yes, they might be preliminary. There's no wrong or bad haiku. We'll come back in around 20 minutes, so maybe make it 12:30. And then we'll have another 10 minutes to just have a bit of a chat and see where we're at and what do you take out of it. As I said earlier, this can be a very mindful experience. You're simply you and your thoughts. And I will just go back to, well, obviously through the images, but some writing tips. Make it succinct, make it evocative, make it present tense. And we'll see you at about 12:30, and hopefully you've come up with some haiku that you'd like to share with the group. Thanks, everyone. I'll mute myself and hide my video, and hope you enjoy the writing experience. Hi everyone, how are you going? We've got probably another 10 minutes. Did anyone have any questions or is anyone struggling? We have already seen one haiku come through. So that was very quick, a very quick one there, fantastic. Oh, we've got some more coming through. I'll read them out because I think you're all disembodied, but body, mind, culture, unique, special life within, the pauper, the king. I like that one. Be lovely if we could all share our thoughts around them too. What was the provenance and you know what you came up with? Did you use one of these images or and I was with that one I was thinking of this image. Abraham's written, "Greens so healing, fire is a way to warm. See motherland if you flew." I think we know which one that was, perhaps. Digits fly to us, cures transferred by the crew. Heal us, but for the true. And let's see if we've got any more coming in. Dialed in, people past and present, all co-create the digital, the verse. Can you see how powerful these small kind of photographic commentary is? It's, and I'd love to know if you find it almost therapeutic, a little bit mindful when you're writing these haiku. Doctor says hello, 12-month wait is over. The screen is frozen. That's really curious, isn't it? And how many times have we heard that when we've been working on and having Zoom meetings and screens freeze? And yeah, it's really interesting. Doctor says hello, 12-month wait is over, the screen is frozen. I'll pop this slide up too because it shows you how to submit, which is, well, it doesn't actually show you how to submit. We've got some X's. I'm sure someone will put it up in the Q&A for you.
Yes, sorry, Margaret Simone will share instructions for submission at the end of your workshop.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. See what happens with technology sometimes. But just some more sort of instructions that it should relate to the theme of digital health equity. And I've also put some places where you might try and publish your own haiku or seek inspiration from other haiku or just see what other people are writing. So there's actually indeed an Australian Haiku Society. And so I put the link there. Pulse is another lovely magazine that I think emerges in the United States, and they, as I said earlier, do a call out for haiku. And there's a New Zealand Poetry Society, and they also produce haiku too. So if you did decide that haiku is your thing and that you wanted to try and get published somewhere, there's some opportunities for you to do so. But of course, you can submit your haiku through Twitter for the competition for this symposium, and it'd be lovely to see people's commentary, because I think haiku is a different way of expressing our thoughts, different way of conceptualizing issues that can be really quite powerful and meaningful. Okay, so we're nearly at the 12:30 mark. Is there anyone else who would like to share their haiku or would like to make a comment on other people's haiku, or indeed just simply how you found the experience of trying to come up with some haiku? I do have some references here too, if you wanted to follow it up more in a more academic, and we're probably all academics here and like to have evidence-based. So you can certainly have a look at these. How are we going? I know you've probably, some of you have got a long day. We can wrap it up there.
Sure, Margaret Simone can tell us about submission instructions now if you stop your share.
Thanks, Mahima. Thanks, Simone. It's lovely to see some love hearts. Hopefully that was just a bit of time out that gave you an opportunity to think in a different way.